Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Glazer Family at Manchester United, the football culture podcast. In the previous episode, we discussed the Glazers' ownership of the club and what the future holds in the fan protest, etc. But today, we're going to talk about something that, in my opinion, goes hand in hand with the Glazers' ownership of Manchester United, and that is FC United, or to give them their full title, Football Club United of Manchester. Now, this is certainly maybe a unique thing in football, but certainly one of the first where in the past, AFC Wimbledon, for example, came out of the ashes of Wimbledon FC, where the club was kind of taken away and rebranded. But this was where a football club was still existing, but disgruntled fans moved away and formed their own football club with the slogan, "Our club, our rules." So I've got a guest today, George Baker, who is part of FC United, and we're going to discuss them and their unique place, I think, in football. So, first of all, George, introduce yourself to the listeners.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me on. So, my name's George Baker. I'm a founder member and a supporter of FC United. I was a former board member from 2016 to 2018, and I'm now a volunteer on the communications team.
Okay, great. So I'm assuming you were originally a Manchester United fan, yes?
Well, still am. The vast majority of us at FC United are still Manchester United fans. We just, when the idea of FC United was mooted in 2005, around the time of the Glazer takeover, and when it was looking more and more inevitable, it was quite an interesting idea to a lot of us. You know, an article was posted in Red Issue, which was the one of the most popular fanzines at Manchester United at the time, and it piqued a lot of interest. So when the Glazers did take over, there was a sizable group of us who decided that we weren't going to give any money to the Glazer regime and form our own club in the image of what we think Manchester United should be. Okay,
so going back to the origins of the club, I do believe there was some possible sort of ideas of this club prior to the Glazer takeover, so around the Sky attempt at taking over United in 1998. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when Rupert Murdoch and Sky B were trying to take over Manchester United, there was a lot of fan protests at the time, led by the Independent Manchester United Supporters Association, also known as AMUSA, and a group called Shareholders United Against Murdoch formed with the idea of buying up as much shares as possible in the club as a fan collective, so as to deter any one private owner. That group later evolved into Shareholders United, who were then part of the fight against the Glazer takeover, and they're now known as the Manchester United Supporters Trust. So yeah, there was and the idea of a breakaway club was first mooted. Then it wasn't discussed as openly as around 2005 when the Glazers were going to take over, but the idea of taking football back to its roots and trying to bring back, you know, the red side of Manchester to the community of Manchester, you know, that was an idea mooted, around 98, 99 originally, and it wasn't forgotten about. It was something that was a viable alternative if a private owner of Manchester United should come to be, and in such an aggressive way as well as the Glazers, because with the Murdoch takeover, you know, there was no talk about debt or leverage or any of that, like there was with the reality of the Glazer takeover. But the reason fans were against it, the potential Sky takeover, was because we didn't want one sole individual owning Manchester United for their own personal ends. You know, we believe that as big as Manchester United had turned into by the late 90s, it was still, to us, our club, if you like. We wanted to either be in charge of it or have a decent influence over the direction of the club as the fans who built it and made it into the club it is. So, you know, regardless of the intentions of people who wanted to take over Manchester United, private ownership was something that a lot of fans were dead against from the start.
Okay, so I guess there was a bit of, I think there was a bit of disillusionment with modern football as well, in the way football was going. You know, like atmosphere at Old Trafford, and I mean, this is not an Old Trafford problem. You know, I'm a Bristol City fan. I've been going since 1987, and the atmosphere has got progressively worse. as the years have gone by and football's become a little bit more sanitized, shall we say. So why was it the moment when the Glazer family took over where there was a group of United fans that really said, enough is enough? And also leading into that question is what was the kind of the discussions around the idea of the possibility and if it could work, forming a new club?
Yeah, so you touched on it there. Like, there was a lot of disillusionment with the direction of the modern game before the Glazer takeover happened. Obviously there was all sorts of issues at Old Trafford and other football grounds, as you say, with regard to ticket allocations, ticket prices, season ticket availability, stewarding, overzealous policing, kickoff times changing all the time. And United were a club that this happened to more than anybody else, really, because nowadays, TV actually absolutely saturates football. But 20 years ago, it was like that. But at the same time, it was there was only a couple of games, perhaps on Sunday, maybe one early kickoff on a Saturday. But it was always Manchester United games getting moved because we were the most popular club. Everybody wanted to watch United on telly. So, but in doing that, they didn't think about the match-going fans, having to travel to the other end of the country on a Sunday afternoon or dead early on a Saturday morning. It might be good for the TV, but it's not good for the match-going fans. So, there was all sorts of issues with supporting United. And when the Glazer takeover was very much the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of people, because here was a man with a family who are extremely ruthless business people and who will just want to milk Manchester United for profit for themselves. They had no interest in football whatsoever. It was just a commercial opportunity to them. And obviously then they leveraged their assets onto the club because they had to borrow hundreds of millions in order to purchase United. And overnight, United became one of the richest clubs in the world to be in the most in debt. So that kind of summed up the direction that Manchester United had gone in and the direction that football was going in as a whole. So we just decided that we weren't going to stand for this anymore, and we'll do things our own way. And United's fan base does have a spirit of rebellion about it, and we can see that with the protests that are happening before games at the moment, being led by the 1958 and other fan groups. Obviously, lots of other football fans are similar, but United have always kind of, even when things were going well on the pitch, there's always been anti-Glazer sentiment since they took over the club. United continued to win trophy after trophy until around 2013 when Alex Ferguson retired. But there was the green and gold protests around 2010 as well. This was still while United were a reasonably successful club. The result, it's like Steve said in the last episode that you had on this, the results don't matter for a lot of United fans. It's about the integrity of Manchester United, and that we felt was being destroyed by being taken over by a family like the Glazers.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester certainly has a history. If anyone knows the history of Manchester, this is not a history podcast, but I would say it is a rebellious city. It does stand up for things. I lived there for 11 years, so I've experienced that myself. And dare I say it, Liverpool's similar, but that's another story.
There's a lot of people begrudgingly admit that Scousers and Mancs have a lot in common, and it is true. Both working class cities that rose up. But as you say, we try to tap into that classic Mancunian spirit of protest and rebellion because, as you say, the city has such a rich history of it with Peterloo and the Chartist movement and the suffragette movement and everything. There's so much more as well. Trade Union Council having their first meeting in Manchester as well. So there's a lot of people, a lot of proud Mancunians at United who were keen to channel that spirit in protecting what we believe is perhaps the best modern day Manchester institution in Manchester United.
Yeah, it's funny. It's my city that I'm from, Bristol, is obviously in the south, very different from Liverpool or Manchester, but it has a bit of a history of rebellion as well. And I think Rory Smith once described Bristol as psychologically northern, meaning it was a rebellious city in the south. But Anyway, maybe that's why I felt so at home in Manchester, being a Bristolian. But okay, so the Glazer takeover happens, and some fans decide, right, enough is enough. We're sick of crap atmospheres, expensive tickets, rubbish kickoff times, etc. And they decide to do something about it. So what was the genesis for the club? I mean, in terms of a timeline, so was there a meeting, and how rapidly did it look possible for the club to form?
So there was a protest meeting organised by EMUSA, I believe, the Man United Supporters Association, at the Methodist Church Hall in the centre of Manchester in the Northern Quarter. And that was a meeting where a lot of United fans came together and discussed how best to protest the potential Glazer takeover. This was around March, April 2005. The takeover happened despite the protests, and a meeting was called at the same venue, which was essentially the inaugural general meeting of FC United, because the idea had been put out about a new club, and anybody who's interested, come down, ask a few questions of the steering committee of the club, and we'll go from there. So the steering committee was formed in a curry house on the Curry Mile, actually. Group of United fans who often met up to discuss the goings on at the club on a Friday night. And it was there and then that they decided to go ahead with the FC United idea and just put it out there that this is what we're doing. A crowdfunder must have raised about 26 grand within a few days. And this was before websites like GoFundMe and Crowdfunder and things like that as well. So it was obviously the internet was still evolving in the mid 2000s, but the internet did play a large part in galvanizing support for FC. So that was obviously a big help. The steering committee was set up. We had that inaugural general meeting where we voted on the club's name, because the FC United was rejected as being too generic by the FA. So we had to go with several options. Either FC United of Manchester, Manchester Central FC, Newton Heath United, or AFC Manchester 1878. Those were the choices. And FC United of Manchester won that one. We voted on the badge as well. There were 3 designs that the fans voted on. So from the very beginning, it was a democratically run organisation, even before we had members, if you like. You know, there were people. Well, we did set up a membership scheme very early on. I personally wasn't involved in the steering committee. I was just one of the founder members. But yeah, as soon as you became a founder member, you could vote on all sorts of things, such as the name of the club and the badge. And then we elected a board of 11 people, 1 board member for every player on the pitch, which was the theory put forward by Rob Brady, who was on the steering committee. And so yeah, we elected a board, and then we then had to find some players in the league to play in. So trials were organised, and 800 to 900 people, I think, applied for the trials. They were hosted on some football pitches in Fallowfield in South Manchester. 200 people were invited down for the trials, and a squad of about 20 something was picked. And the steering committee had in the meantime appointed a manager, Carl Marginson, who was a Manchester United fan and quite up for the idea. He'd not been a manager before. He'd been assistant manager at a local club in the North West Counties League, which was the league that we were eventually admitted into. And we were only admitted into that league after a presentation was put forward very quickly by the steering committee to the North West Counties Football League, which is the very bottom of the semi-professional pyramid in English football. So the 10th tier, essentially. And there were 3 or 4 open spots in the league. So we put forward the presentation, and they agreed to admit us. And a lot of that was down to the hard work of the volunteers and the steering committee, who really put in 18-hour days, 7 days a week for weeks on end. We managed to get a ground share sorted with Bury as well, Gig Lane, which it could have been, ideally could have been somewhere closer to central Manchester, but still part of Greater Manchester and easy to get to with the public transport system. So there were plenty of people up for coming to games. We averaged 3,000 fans in the first season. We won the North West Counties Division 2 quite comfortably with the squad that Margie put together. And yeah, averaging 3,000 people in a league where, the average was about 80, I believe, the season before.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of incredible trips all over the northwest of England to smaller grounds and other grounds that a lot of teams had to move their games to bigger nearby grounds. We must have played some league. We played about 3 league games at Oldham Athletics Boundary Park. There was loads of others as well. Stafford Rangers. I think there was Chorley. There's loads of nearby grounds that had to be bigger, because a lot of these clubs just couldn't handle having 1,500 to 2,000 people turning up to away games. So the enthusiasm in that first season was incredible, and it really made us, for those who came along for the ride, it was like, this could be the start of something big. So a lot of people fell in love with it immediately.
Okay, yeah. Well, Carl Marginson, I seem to recall, if memory serves, and it was a long time ago, about 30 years now, but I seem to recall Carl Marginson playing for, I think it was Rotherham, and scoring 2 goals against Bristol City at Ashton Gate. And Rotherham hadn't won away all season, and Bristol City were near the top, but not quite on the playoffs. And I think Joe Jordan got fired after his 2 goals. And Joe Jordan's a former United player. A bit of irony there. But I seem to recall that. If anyone out there knows and says, no, he only got 1, or no, he didn't score at all, but I'm sure I remember him scoring 2 goals at Ashton Gate and Joe Jordan getting fired the next day.
It's an interesting one, that, because it's obviously, as you say, the United connection with Joe Jordan. But yeah, he had a pretty decent playing career. Margie, like as you say, did really well at Rotherham. He played for Macclesfield as well. I believe he was part of the squad that got them promoted to the Football League. So he was a very seasoned football man, and a local lad, and a big United fan as well. So he was perfect for the job when we hired him in 2005.
Yeah, I can imagine. So the club's formed. You've got a decent support. You're taking thousands of fans away from home. And this is a new experience for the fans, having, or like previously, been going to Old Trafford and being sold an expensive hot dog, not a great atmosphere. I think it's fair to say, the atmosphere at Old Trafford's not been great probably since maybe the 80s, 90s. How did it feel following this new club that you were all a part of, in terms of your match day experience? Like, what was the comparison? Were you like suddenly just like, this is what it's all about? Like, this is what we've been looking for.
Well, yeah, it was extremely difficult for everyone to make that sacrifice, and for a lot of United fans who'd had season tickets for 10, 20, 30 years, to give that up, never knowing whether or not you'd get that back, because the demand for United tickets didn't decrease with the Glazer takeover. We were hoping that thousands and tens of thousands of match-going Reds would boycott, but unfortunately, United being the monolith that it had become, there was always somebody to take your seat from you who'd been waiting for years, who didn't particularly care for the politics or the integrity of the club. They just want to watch the team in front of them. So to give that up for a lot of Reds was absolutely heart-wrenching, and it caused quite a schism in the fan base for a little while. There was a lot of people who understood FC United, and they didn't think it was for them, but they understood why it was happening. There were others who were really up for it and were saying, I'm never going back, I'm plowing all my money into the new club. And there were others who were really vitriolic and scathing about it, calling us Judases and traitors and things like that. Thankfully, that's subsided massively over the last 20 years. I think a lot of United fans have seen FC United for what it is, which is never something that was set up to compete with Manchester United. But to provide an alternative to what's happening at United, and to provide a friendly, affordable match day experience for United fans. So a lot of that ill feeling has since thawed, but there were friendships that were dissolved as a result, and things like that. So it was extremely difficult. Myself, I was 19 when FC United formed. I didn't have a season ticket because I couldn't afford one, obviously, as a 19-year-old, and that was another reason why I was quite up for going off to the new club to try out the idea of FC United, because I would go to Old Trafford semi-regularly, but you would always have to apply something like 5 weeks in advance. You would often get only one ticket, so you'd be sat on your own. In a stadium that, as you say, the atmosphere had kind of depleted since the 90s. So I was just like, there's got to be more to football than this, But then again, you can't change your allegiance, can you? You can't just drop everything. I was born with Manchester United. My dad is a massive United fan. and there was never going to be any other club for me since I was 5 years old. So but I was thinking to myself, there has to be another way. There has to be a way of enjoying football doesn't feel like you're sitting in a theatre. So the idea of FC United was mooted, and you'd never felt like you left Manchester United watching FC United, because you felt like you were creating something for the fans and by the fans. And as I mentioned earlier, in the image of what Manchester United should be, where you get to stand on the terraces with your friends, you get to sing the old classics, the old United songs. You have a beer while you're on the terrace. You can pay on the gate, just rock up and pay on the gate. You don't have to worry about tickets in advance or getting chubbed or anything like that. Chubbed being the term that we used when we would get tickets refused because of Arthur Chubb, Manchester United. So there's never any worry of being chubbed anymore. And obviously we're playing in red, white and black. Our names are rejumbling of Manchester United Football Club, essentially. So for us, we felt a spiritual connection to Manchester United while watching FC United, and that remains to this day.
Yeah. Just for, we've got a lot of listeners around the world. We've got like a listener in Bolivia, believe it or not. So just for the worldwide listeners, chubbed, yeah, as you say, comes from, I do believe, receiving a letter from Arthur Chubb, who was the manager of the ticket office, saying, unfortunately, your application for an away ticket has been declined as blah, blah. You didn't get your name pulled out of the hat or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was home tickets mainly. Yeah.
Home tickets. Okay. It was
just a completely random ballot as well. There was no loyalty scheme for non-season ticket holders or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just you submitted an application for the however many tickets were available, and you had to do it. I remember before the internet, my dad used to have to write. He used to do it by post. And because he worked for Royal Mail, he would make sure it got there on the very first day that ticket applications were accepted. And this was 5 weeks in advance. And you just think to yourself, why are we having to go through such a rigmarole just to be able to watch our team? Obviously my dad being of a generation where a season ticket barely cost anything and he could rock up and stand on the terraces for decades. That was his fan culture as a United fan. And that's what I wanted, but it'd been taken away. And everybody says, oh, well, that's the price of success. It doesn't have to be the price of success. You don't have to settle. If you're not enjoying the experience, you can do something about it and take direct action. And that's what we did forming FC United.
Yeah. I remember going with my friends when I was a teenager in the 90s, Bristol City. There'd be a big group of us, 12, 13, 14. We go down, pay on the door, go in. Bristol City, very different from Manchester United, not the demand. But that's been lost at Bristol City now. That's not something you could do. And we could afford it, on our part-time working in the supermarket wages. Now, I look at tickets for younger people and I just think, how can you afford it? You know what I mean? Like, particularly like regular, it's like, something has hugely been lost there. Okay, so FC United formed. What's the ethos of the club in terms of how it works? So some listeners might not know exactly what fan ownership means. So, for example, in Germany, it means like 50+1, that kind of thing. In Spain, the clubs aren't owned by the fans, apart from, believe it or not, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Athletic Club, because they're seen as, Real Madrid and Barcelona are seen as being able to sustain a membership model, and Athletic Club are seen as being unique, because of their Basque-only policy, so they have an exception from it. But under Spanish law, it has to have a PLC system, an ownership model. So how does it work in terms of the democracy of it all? So I believe FC United is quite democratic, no? In terms of, how you all decide on what the tickets prices should be. Does it extend to whether you should have a shirt sponsor or not, or how does it work?
So it's 100% owned by its members. It's 100% fan-owned club. It's what's known as a community benefit society. And that's how the club was formed. They were known as Industrial and Provident Societies back in 2005. Since changed their names to Community Benefit Societies. And it's very similar to a co-op. So it's 100% owned by its members. You pay £25 a year, and that makes you a co-owner of the club as well as a member. And so we vote on, as you say, everything from electing a board. Every board candidate, once you're elected, you're entitled to serve 2 years and then you have to restand after that 2 years if you want to continue. We voted. One of the founding principles of the club was that we wouldn't have a shirt sponsor because we want to avoid outright commercialism. That was one of the key founding principles of the club. Ticket prices are often put forward by the board. We used to have a thing at the bottom of any resolution put forward by the board or by members saying, like, the board recommend you vote for or against this motion. We've even voted to get rid of that because we felt that that was biasing the results, having an effect on the results. I don't think there was any vote that passed which the board didn't recommend you voted for. So it felt like the democracy of the club was being directed solely by the elect. Even though the board members were elected, it still felt like perhaps that was too much power that the board had. So we even voted to get rid of that. And so now members and the board can put forward resolutions on the club as to whether or not ticket prices go up, whether they go down, whether we want to have sponsorship. We do have sponsorship, but we just don't have shirt sponsorship. But we also vote on the type of sponsors we want. Like, there's been votes on whether or not to accept sponsorship from gambling companies. I believe the initial one was voted in favour, and then it's since we've voted since against having gambling sponsorship. And that's the democracy, isn't it? Opinions change over time, and as long as the members are fully in control of the club, then then FC United is not betraying its principles, in my opinion. It remains a 100% fan-owned club, and we vote on literally everything. The resolutions have to pass with a 2/3 majority as well, and the club is then bound to enact on those resolutions. It has an obligation to act on those things. There's also members' votes, which carry less sway with regards to, it's up to the board's discretion whether or not members' votes that are put forward. Those are less serious things like designs of shirts or policies regarding hospitality and things like that, or ideas when it comes to what we should and shouldn't have on the shirt, those kind of things. Those only have to pass with a 50% majority, but the board, it's up to the board's discretion whether or not they implement it. So there's all kinds of different democratic methods within the club, but that's the beauty of it. £25 a year means you're an owner of the club, and you can vote on these decisions, and you can even put your own forward.
Okay, interesting. Has there been any situations where there's been any disagreements, or this model as I wouldn't say not work, because the club's been going for a long time now, 20 years, and it's still in existence, still healthy, still has good crowds, at that level. But has there any been some, difficult times where there's been disagreements? Has it ever led to any tension, or has it by and large worked?
Yeah, so there was when we moved into Broadhurst Park, we managed to build our own stadium in the Moston area of Manchester, which doesn't have a football club within it, within Moston or Newton Heath. It was meant to be in Newton Heath, which would have been very symbolic, obviously being where Manchester United formed and under their original name. But the council kiboshed that in the end, saying it was too close to City's ground. So they moved us a couple of miles up the road to Moston. We built a stadium there, long story short, it was completed in 2015. And that made us, we believe, the first fan-owned club in the world to build our own stadium from scratch. So it was a hell of an achievement, and everybody involved deserves a lot of credit for that. But it became clear around once we moved into the ground that there was no real business plan for how to take the club forward. There was a lot of the board that we'd been electing had been the same people for the last 10 years, obviously restanding every 2 years, but because they were familiar names, people just ticked the box of the familiar name. There was a group of people who were really, involved in the governance of the club who kept being re-elected. And as a result, the scrutiny kind of faded over the years to the point where when there was scrutiny, once we moved in to our new ground and we found that, we weren't making the best of this facility, the criticism came forward, and a wall of silence kind of came up from the board members, and they started accusing the fan base of bullying them and abusing them. And it's true that some fans did take it a bit too far with their criticisms, but to completely refused to engage with the fan base over a handful of individuals wasn't taken very well, and it resulted in the entire board stepping down after various protests in around 2016. And an extraordinary general meeting was called. That was held in Prestwich, where 20 people, including myself, 19 or 20 people, stood for election to the board of 11. And a couple of people from the previous board made it on. A few others stood again, but didn't make it on. I managed to finish 11th. I managed to squeeze onto the board, and I served 2 years myself as a board member. But ever since then, the direction of the club has, the board have tried to be a lot more transparent. A few changes have been made, like the amount of people on the board has been reduced because 11 felt like a bit too many. So ever since, there was quite a lot of conflict around that time, 2015, 16, but a lot of it's been smoothed over now. There were people on both sides of those arguments that are friends now. And it's not something that we really dwell on anymore. So it's like with any revolution follows a civil war kind of thing, so but ours took 10 years at least before it came to a head. There's an excellent Guardian article by Daniel Taylor written around 2016, which goes more into detail about that. I think that's still online if anybody wants to read more about it. And there's obviously the book by J.P. O'Neill, Red Rebels, which details the formation of FC United and the subsequent fallout 10 years later. But as I was saying, like the vast majority of FC United fans, we don't look back on those days very much these days, because the club is in a very stable position now. Obviously, there's challenges. We still owe quite a bit on the ground because there were a few loans from Manchester City Council in order to help us build it. But the majority of the cost of the ground was paid off at the time via a community shares scheme, which basically meant that the fans bought shares that went into the building of the ground that we can later withdraw once the club makes an operating profit. But most FC fans were like, we don't want anything back from it. We're putting in this money for the future of the club, but you are entitled to have a return on that investment once the club makes a significant operating profit.
Okay.
So, a lot of various funding went into the stadium, and there are challenges ahead of us in order to pay off the remaining debt that we have on the stadium. But we're in a very strong position at the moment, and it's an exciting time with tomorrow, Saturday, 29th of March, we play Stockton Town at home, and the 1958 group who've been leading the protests at Old Trafford are coming down, and we're hoping that lots more United fans who've known about FC but never come down, they'll come down for this game, and hopefully they'll have a great day and come to see us again.
Yeah, I mean, I went to a few FC games in 2005. I had a great time because I just like the idea of it. I'm very pro fan ownership, and the atmosphere was great. There was the traditional United songs, but there were some new ones as well. I think if I recall correctly, long time ago now, but to something to do with Malcolm Glazer, Sky TV, and Anarchy in the UK tune by the Sex Pistols.
I'm an FC fan. Yeah, that's I think.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was one of the early ones from the first season. Yeah, so we have a varied songbook, songs about FC United, and obviously a lot of classic United songs as well. But they all fit perfectly well within FC United, the United songs we sing.
Yeah, cool. So it's like. So there's been a few ups and downs, but by and large, it's working. I mean, the club's still going strong after 20 years. Now, in terms of, because there's some people that say, you need to have an owner, someone who's got the direction, too many cooks spoil the broth, this kind of thing. But there's been ups and downs, but generally the club's in a healthy position. So Broadhurst Park, let's touch on that actually. So first fan-owned stadium being built, which is quite an achievement, I think. Now, it was obviously you wanted it to be in Newton Heath originally. It's where, if people don't know, Manchester United was originally a club from Newton Heath in the north of the city, and it was built in Moston. Now, I used to work in Moston many years ago, and I think it's fair to say one of the more deprived areas, or one of them within the city. How has the new stadium interacted with the community? Because obviously the whole ethos of the club seems very community based. Has that breathed a bit of new life into the area of Moston? And how do you guys react with the local community there?
Yeah, so it's been fantastic for the people of Moston. Like, we have on the opposite side of the stadium, we have a 3G pitch training which the team train on, but it's never empty. Like, it's quite a big pitch, and there's kids on there all the time. So it's constantly booked out. Whenever you go to Broaders Park, even if it's on a Monday evening, you'll see that 3G pitch full of teams playing on it. So we've got that really good facility, which Moston didn't have before. There was Moston Juniors that already existed in Moston and played on Broaders Park, where we built the ground, and they had teams from age 5 right up to age 16. So they instead of stepping on their toes and forming our own like junior teams, we work directly with Moston Juniors, and they go into FC United's under 17s if they're still playing after the under 16s is finished, and they can they've got the chance to play in our academy as well if they want to make an application to the academy and see if they can get in. So Moston Juniors, we've had a largely good relationship with them as a result, because this facility has popped up right where they used to play. And yeah, so we there were some objections to a football stadium being built on part of Broaders Fields in Moston, and it had to go to a judicial review, which ruled in favour of FC United. But a lot of the residents who are leading the campaign against the stadium have since come along and visited, and I remember one of the ringleaders admitted to our previous CEO, Damien Chadwick, that it couldn't have been better for the local area in the end. Once it was built, a lot of the fears that they had didn't really materialise, and it's just been a really good facility to have in, as you say, one of the poorer areas of Manchester that's never had a club before, a football club of any specific stature. And during COVID as well, there was a lot of interaction with the local community, even though, obviously our staff were furloughed just as anybody else was. But it didn't stop a lot of fans wanting to help the local area, even though there was no football at the time. So a food bank was set up underneath the St Mary's Road end. So it's known as the FC United Food Hub, which delivered food parcels to a lot of struggling families in the local area. And there was essentially a drop-in area for anybody who was struggling as well. So we've done all sorts of community initiatives over the years. We've offered free tickets to people in M40 and M9 postcodes as well. That was something we did quite frequently, because there was a misconception when we first moved in that it was because it sold out a couple of times when we had the Benfica game. The first game at our stadium was a friendly against Benfica's B team, and it sold out. And then there was a couple of home games that had really high attendances, and there was a misconception in the local area that it had become a members only thing, that you couldn't rock up on the day and just pay in. So we had to kind of get over that really, and just remind the locals that no, you can just it's like any non-league ground. You can walk up on the day and pay on the gate. So the capacity is 4,400 at Broaders Park, and our average these days is around 1,800. So there's always room for anybody who wants to come along. And yeah, it's just about getting out into the community and just reminding people that we exist and that everybody's welcome. And I think we've done a really good job of that over the last few years.
Yeah, and there's terraces there as well, which is always good to know if you want to stand and watch football.
Yeah,
that's a great place. I take it you can have a beer while you're watching the game at that level as well.
Yeah, you can.
No alcohol restrictions.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about it as well. So you can take your beer onto the terrace. I think that stops at National League level. We're at level 7 at the moment in the Northern Premier League, and level 5 is where restrictions on that come in, which is a shame because even the top tier of non-league doesn't allow drinking in view of the pitch, but we're still 2 leagues away from that. So in the meantime, we're going to make the most of that as much as we can. Yeah.
Well, in Spain, there's no alcohol allowed in the stadium, full stop, not even on the concourse. But at the non-league levels, you're allowed, but not here. Okay, so so it seems there's a lot of good things going on there, FC within the community, etc. So in terms of and a huge community club as well. So in terms of the future, so is there like a feeling with FC fans? It sounds like you've got a good thing going on. So you've got decent gates at that level. You can do things like you can have a beer in view of the pitch. It seems like you can enjoy yourself. It's not so corporate. Is there a desire to go up to the next levels? Or are FC fans kind of like, do you know what? Let's not ruin a good thing here. Let's just keep this how it is. What's the ambition for the club? Do you want to go as far as you can? I mean, let's say get into the Football League, for example. Is that an ambition, or is there a feeling of kind of, do you know what? The performance on the pitch isn't the most important thing. The football maybe is not the most important thing. It's more about what we've got as a community.
So there's a desire to win as many games as we can and go as far as we can. But FC United is a club designed to go as far as the members want it to go, really, in the sense that the vast majority of us want to maintain the 100% member-owned structure of the club, which is what we've got at the moment. And we want to see how far up the football pyramid we can get while maintaining that principle. So as much as we want to win games and get promoted and go as far as we can, the further up you go, the more the problems that we broke away from come back to the fore. As we've touched on just then, drinking in view of the pitch is even forbidden at the top tier of non-league. So 2 promotions, say we get, a big part of the culture of the club goes out the window. We'd have to stay underneath the stands if we wanted to drink. I'm sure we'd get used to it, but again, one thing that we're proud of doing is leading the fight for change within the game as well. We've got a good relationship with the Football Supporters Association, the FSA, which are the main, unity fan group in English football, and we hope that perhaps we will be able to lobby for change as we go up the leagues. Obviously, we're just one club and things like that, and but FC United prides itself on being a thorn in the side of the football establishment. So we can always go. If we have a successful period where we get a couple of promotions, then perhaps we can start making waves in that in the side of football administration as well. So we'll see what happens, but there's no specific ambition to get to the Football League or anything like that. As I say, we want the club to be successful. We want the club to be competitive because results do matter on the pitch. I've got a face on me all week if we don't win a game. And it's been a tricky one this season. We're 11th at the moment, but we were in a relegation fight for the first half of this season. It was looking quite grim, but we've managed to largely get out of that now. And it is stressful. You find we really do. A lot of people think we're at FC United because we're perhaps there's a stubbornness to us. We'd rather be at Old Trafford. We'd rather be back at Old Trafford, but our principles don't allow us to be there. And while some of that may be true, we've genuinely developed a huge affection for FC United over the years. It's become our club, and we care about the results. And we're just as passionate about FC United as we are about Manchester United. We want the club to be successful, but we also want to. It's very important to the vast majority of fans that the principles stay intact and that the 100% member ownership remains. Because even AFC Wimbledon, who were instrumental in helping us set up back in 2005, they had to sell 20%, I think it was, of the stake in their club to a private bidder in order to build the Plough Lane Stadium and remain competitive within the Football League. And I don't think that would happen at FC United. But if it does, it'll go through the members. If we want to vote in favour of less democratic control, then that in itself is an act of democracy. Like a lot of people say, like with Wrexham, for example, and what's happening to them now. Isn't it a shame that, they've rejected fan ownership for this kind of Hollywood life that they've got? But at the end of the day, a lot of football fans want to be competitive. And it was a democratic, because Wrexham were a fan-owned club before Reynolds and McElhenney bought them. And they voted something like 95% plus in favour of selling the club. So in essence, even though they're no longer fan owned and they've gone away from that. Wrexham's direction now is a fan-led direction. It was up to the fans to make that decision, and they had that opportunity to do so because they'd taken control of the club. So, democracy in football is unique in many ways, and who knows what the future holds for FC United, but it will be at the fans' discretion. It will be our decision whether or not we get a shirt sponsor one day. I really hope we don't. I'll be voting against that if anybody ever puts it forward. But we struggle to attract main sponsors as a result, because obviously a company logo on the shirt is the big thing that they want when they want to sponsor a football club. But our principles are what are more important. And I know for a fact that if a vote was put forward on something as relatively small as a shirt sponsor, it would be roundly rejected by FC fans. So any idea that we would relinquish even a percentage of the control of the club, that would likely be voted against as well. So I think the club will remain 100% fan owned for the foreseeable future, and it's about maintaining that principle and getting as far and being as successful on the pitch as possible while maintaining that. That's the victory.
Okay, that all sounds good. Now, Broadhurst Park, I've not been there yet. I'll get there when I get the chance sometime. I'd love to come and see it. I live in Spain, so I don't come back to the UK that much, and I've not been to Manchester for a while now, actually. So I need to come back and have a visit to Broadhurst Park. So I love the idea of FC United, but a new club come from, say, Manchester United, which is like, I don't have any personal issues with Manchester United. I have issues with Cardiff City, Bristol Rovers, and Swindon Town, but because they're our rivals. Manchester United is miles off us. But being in non-league, have you had any sort of like ill feeling, like, oh, they're part of Manchester United, or they've come from Manchester United, they're a bigger club, they've got bigger gates than us, they've got a nice stadium? Has there been any resentment? But also, leading into that question, like, who are your rivals? I mean, like, who is FC United's derby? We've got the Seville derby here in Seville on Sunday, Real Betis Sevilla, which I'll be at and looking forward to. What's FC's big derby day, and has it changed down the years as you've progressed, or?
So, I mean, we don't so much have a local rival, because we didn't want to start any animosity with other non-league fans. Really, that wasn't the point of the club. When we first formed, there was a bit of resentment. There was a lot of people confused. Fans of already established non-league clubs in the Greater Manchester area, such as Altrincham, Stalybridge, what have you, were a bit like, why have all thousands of people all suddenly got into non-league? And then they see us in the media or what have you, on YouTube or whatever, saying, it's great, we love it, non-league's brilliant, you should come down. And it created a bit of do FC United fans think they invented non-league football or something? There was a bit of resentment in that respect, because we came, they interpreted it as a bit of arrogance and a bit of a lack of self-awareness. But it wasn't. We weren't being like the fans who were saying FC United is brilliant. They weren't saying other non-league clubs aren't brilliant. It was just, this is fantastic for us because we're Manchester United fans and we want to stay together as a collective and form a club in the image of United. So going off and supporting a club with no connection to, like, ever, it wasn't really an option. And FC United was a way to keep the fight against the Glazers together as well. So it was always going to be, if you've got an affiliation to Manchester United, we feel like we're channeling that through FC United. So that's the spiritual connection we have to FC. Whereas we didn't have that with just any other random club. And a lot of people would say, there's all these non-league clubs in the local area. Why don't you go and watch them instead? They would appreciate the support. And it was about keeping that collective together. And if loads of Manchester United fans descended on one specific non-league club, for example, and demanded, to be involved in the administration of the club, and that's essentially we're unwelcome visitors taking over somebody else's club, which is what we broke away from.
That's good. You're Glazer in it, aren't you? You're becoming exactly. The Glazers. Yeah.
It's never an option to go en masse to one club or split up and go to lots of different clubs, because that doesn't keep the protest together. That doesn't keep the anti-Glazer sentiment together. It doesn't keep United fans together as a unit. So FC United was the perfect vessel for that. I would say, there's been times where we play a lot of the same. We play the same clubs quite frequently, and in the local area, there's a little bit of a rivalry with Hyde United at the moment. They're a club that in our league, and there's often, I wouldn't say trouble, but there's sometimes a little bit of argy-bargy with Hyde United fans when they come to visit Broaders Park and vice versa. A lot of terrace banter. It's mostly terrace banter, obviously, but I wouldn't call them a rival as such. When we were we spent 4 years in the Conference North, which is the highest we've played at in level 6 of the pyramid before we got relegated in 2019. And for those 4 years, we shared the league with Stockport County. Who, and if you've met any diehard Stockport fans, there's nothing they hate more than anything related to United or City, particularly United, because there's a lot of City fans in Stockport. But they see us as just mini Man United, and that got pretty vicious. Because Stockport, I'd understand it as a Stockport fan. You see where they are now. For 4 years, they had to languish in the 6th level of the English pyramid, playing a club and losing to a club who were formed by fans of a club they hate. And, that's how far Stockport fell, that they were losing games and being knocked out of the FA Cup by a team formed by Manchester United fans on a whim less than 15 years previous. It was probably quite a low point for them, which we really enjoyed. So that was probably the tastiest rivalry we've had. And you still get snipes from Stockport fans online sometimes when they're reminded of our existence. But obviously, they're a long-established club with a big fan base, so it was inevitable that they would eventually get out of that rut and rise up the leagues as they're doing now. So other than that, we've come up the leagues with teams like Bradford Park Avenue, and there was a bit of a Yorkshire, Lancashire thing there for a bit, but by and large, we enjoy going to Bradford Park Avenue, and their fans are nice. So that wasn't really a rivalry as such. One thing that does happen when we go to Yorkshire, the west, north and east of Yorkshire, not so much South Yorkshire, but there's always, well, I say always, that quite often, if we play a team in Yorkshire, there's local Leeds fans who might come out and try and cause a bit of trouble. That's happened. It doesn't so much happen nowadays, but it can occasionally happen. And every town in Yorkshire outside of the south, outside of the Sheffield area, it seems to be just infested with Leeds fans. See us as mini Man United or mini scum, as they would refer to us. So they're coming up. A few of their fans will come, and sometimes there's trouble, like Whitby, Harrogate, Goole, Frickley. Like there's loads of clubs where they're not necessarily fans of those clubs. Who, by and large, at non-league, everybody gets on. And we love going to. There's Marine in Liverpool. Sometimes there's a bit of trouble there because of United, Liverpool, and all that. But people who are involved with Marine FC are fantastic. The fans and the people who run the club, who really care about it. There's none of that feeling. So you find yourself getting on with fans from Liverpool and things like that. So it's not something that we seek out, really. We're not here to start any aggro with other fans at non-league, because non-league's great. We really, everybody who's been at FC United since the start or come along over the years has found a new lease of life as a football fan, and it's due to that community feel in non-league football. And there's sometimes some games have to be segregated here and there, but that's just natural, really, with what happens in football. So it's not something that we dwell on. But the Stockport rivalry was quite fun when we were in the same league as them, but not sure we'll ever play them again outside of a cup competition. But you never know.
Yeah, true. It's I found when I was in Manchester, there seems to be quite a lot of City fans in Hyde as well. I don't know why, but maybe that's got something to do with
maybe. There's a few. I know a few Hyde fans who are also United fans, but Tameside is a bit of a mix. But it is East Manchester, and really that's a blue area.
Yeah. Okay. So to wrap up, so the process this weekend. What's happening? What are you doing to obviously put pressure on the Glazer family at Manchester United? And if people want to find out more about FC United, it all sounds good to me. Where can they? They could be United fans. I take it non-United fans are welcome, taking an interest in the club. Where can they find out more? Yeah.
So this weekend we've got the 1958 group, who one of the United fan groups who are leading the protests against the Glazers at the moment. They're coming along for the day. They're bringing their banners, they're bringing their flags, and they're going to come down and just show solidarity with us, because they reached out to us to try and create a unity front among United fan groups, because there's TRA, who are a vocal fan group who have a quadrant at Old Trafford, just underneath where the players, above the players' tunnel. They're another group that's quite active in United's fan base, and the 1958 got a good relationship with them, and they wanted to reach out and create a relationship with us as well, because they saw us as, you know, the people who had been there and done it when it comes to protesting against the Glazers' occupation of Manchester United, because we are, the only group really who have continuously protested against the Glazers' presence at Manchester United over the last 20 years. And so it'll be good to have, it'll be good to take a protest away from Old Trafford as well and spread it across Manchester, so that that's the way it'll look as well, in the sense that even when Manchester United don't have a game, there's still protests against the Glazers. And that's a good way to do it, is at FC United, when we often play at Saturday at 3 o'clock. So it's going to be a really good occasion. We've got the pre-match entertainment that we always have, of course you can Malcolm, which is a pre-match event where we have bands and poets, singers, comedians, speakers from various organisations that align with our values. They have a stage underneath the SMRE behind the goal. It's a fantastic pre-match function. The 1958 will be doing some questions at that, and it'll be a really good day to just show unity among United fans and how we're all united against the Glazer ownership. So, and if you want to come down, that's happening tomorrow. I'm not sure when you're going to put this pod out, but it's happening Saturday, 29th of March, that United Day, as we're calling it. So anybody's welcome to come down. It's £13 entry. As I said earlier, membership is £25 a year. fc-utd.co.uk is our website. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on all the socials. And as I say, £25 a year, you become an owner of a football club. And it's been an absolutely wonderful ride over the last 20 years. And yeah, the vast majority of us are Manchester United fans, but there are, any football fan is welcome to come along and see what we're about. Because there's fans of other clubs that have popped along over the years who like our ethos and what we're trying to do. And as long as they understand our roots and that our continued love for Manchester United, everybody's welcome.
Yeah, sounds good to me. As I say, I'd say to the listeners, take an interest in FC United. I mean, we've got listeners all around the world. So, maybe you're in Latin America or in Singapore, for example, and maybe you can't attend matches at Broaders Park, but at least take an interest in the club. And yeah, like George says, you can become an owner of a football club for £25 a year. So that all sounds good to me. Okay, George, best of luck with the club going forward. Keep up the good work, and also with the protest against the Glazer family. And thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks very much, James. Really enjoyed it. Cheers.